G'day guys, Tours20 here and welcome back to Marble Mountain. Today's episode is all focused on building up the population of Marble Mountain because we are lacking in residents. At the moment we have 1,900 and that is really not much. It's not basically filling all the vacant positions that are within all of our industry that we've been placing down and all of our commercial as well. So it's really important that I get that up so that we stop losing businesses to abandonment, which is what's happening at the moment. So I'm going to do that, pretty much focus on building up residents. I'm going to build some houses, that like a whole neighborhood here in Chester Hill. This is going to be a mostly poorer size of houses, a neighborhood that's going to look pretty run down, and some smaller houses, but also some government houses too that are going to be around this area. And then we're going to go for a really different style of neighborhood, and we're going to start building some more high rises probably around this area, because this is pretty much where the downtown's going to sit. So there's going to be a lot more high rises around this area. So two types of neighborhoods are going to be built in this episode. I'm going to start off with a live play, and then I'm going to shoot onto a time lapse, and then we'll do another live play. So a bit of a sandwich for this episode. And look, I want to address something that people have been sort of asking about. People have been saying why I'm not zoning residential areas instead of just plopping them down. So the reason why I'm not is, let me just show you. So this is the regular way of, playing City Skylines. You zone, and then you wait for it all to plop up, and all of a sudden you have some residents. Now these are spawning in a much different style than the regular vanilla game. It's because I've got the mods plop the growables, so there's no scaffolding that doesn't grow like that. Now this is fine, this is the quickest way of building some residents, but I really don't like the way that neighborhoods spawn like this. I also don't like some types of buildings, like I don't like that one, and I don't really like that one. There's a whole bunch of buildings that I really dislike in this game, so I just try to avoid them by plopping them down myself. So rather than doing that, I use Find It to find my own buildings. Oh, bit of a lag there. I use Find It to find my own buildings and then place down buildings like this. I do that because then I can build in my own style. So in particular, this neighborhood has a particular style, and they are built in a certain way, just like Chester Hill will be built in a certain way, and then all the houses around here will be built in a certain way. And the way that I'm going to use Find It is I use Find It by searching in growables, and I can then just basically search for any houses that I like in particular. So for instance, because this is going to be a neighborhood that is going to probably have a lot more rundown houses, I'm going to be searching for mostly those types of houses. And then that way I can pick and choose and decide the ones that I think fit the best. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to scroll through and find the ones that actually work in this area. And there's also a bunch of buildings that I do want to use that are going to be pretty much around here, and that's these ones that I've got from the workshop. This is pretty much the only houses that I've downloaded from the workshop, and probably will be the only houses I download, because I think that you can't get houses like this in the vanilla game, and I think they look great, and I'm going to detail them a bunch. But that's it for the live play, because you don't want to see me just plopping it down like this. It's going to get boring. So let's jump to a time lapse, and I'll let you know what I'm up to in that. So now that I'm doing the commentary, I've obviously finished the build, and I can reflect on how this whole neighborhood turned out. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with the amount of detail I could achieve in this area without, really going to too much effort and trying to get every inch of area to be looking completely realistic. What I was trying to go for was a mix of high detail, but then also making things easy for myself to just basically have the feeling of pretty much zoning an area or just plopping down an area without just watching those ugly buildings spawn in places where I didn't really want them. So what I'm trying to do is trying to keep the detail up, but trying to also make it quite easy to get these suburbs pretty much out. And my technique for this was pretty much finding the houses that best suit this area, and then once I found those houses, I made a fence, like a backyard that was going to go behind each one of these houses. And as you can see, they're not, those backyards aren't exactly, you know, they're not perfect. They don't go behind. They're not separating every single house, and they're a bit wobbly at times, and, you know, they're just not perfect. Which is fine, you know, because for me, I've got to find this, like, happy medium between whether I'm going for, like, a really, really high detailed area, whether I'm going for somewhere that's kind of just, like, low detail. I'm trying to find that place where it's the sweet spot. And, you know, I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. Like, reason number one, I want to just be spitting out suburbs quite quickly and easily, because this series isn't really about creating the most realistic looking place. It's kind of about, you know, watching the city operate. And also, at the same time, I do want it to have a particular feeling, and, you know, just zoning a place doesn't have any sort of feeling. You just, you know, you need to put a little bit of elbow grease into it, and, you know, put a little bit of work into an area to make it look a particular way. And in terms of making this place look a particular way, I'm quite happy with how the whole place turned out, to be honest. But yeah, these backyards are not perfect, and, you know, I could have probably spent a bit longer making sure they all lined up properly, but, you know, I can't be bothered. And also using these trees to cover up some of the ugliness behind the houses, I think works somewhat nicely. And I did say at the very beginning of this series that I was going to be playing pretty much the vanilla game. I guess this is my version of the vanilla game. This is pretty much me just being a bit restricted with how many assets and mods I use for this series. Sorry if I like pushed anyone in the wrong direction with me saying that I was going to be playing pretty much the vanilla game. This is what I had in mind. Just sort of taken a real step back from the Steam Workshop and just trying to use basically what I have and use it in a much smarter way. And to be honest, this is how I started Springwood. So if you've been watching my channel for a long time, my other series Springwood, which has been running on my channel for about 2 years now, which is pretty crazy, but at the moment, that series is just super high detail. It's a massive city. I've got heaps of assets, heaps of mods running. However, when I first started that city, I was trying to make a profit. I was watching the residential areas and making sure that there was enough workers and enough businesses around, and just like watching all the vital city signs. But, you know, just I guess as it's been growing over time and as I've sort of changed as a player, it's just become a city that I'm detailing, which is fine because that's like just the evolution of that city. But, you know, I did really want to get back to, you know, what I sort of started off doing, and that's pretty much trying to make a realistic looking place, but also trying to play the game as much as possible, which is, you know, something that I think I am missing out on a lot in my other series, and something that I really love doing in this one. So that's probably why I've been paying a lot of attention to this series at the moment. It's been a really nice break for me, doing a whole lot of less detail work. And, you know, what I've been up to is I've just pretty much finished all those shotgun little neighborhoods. And what I'm doing now is just putting in some government houses. These places are they're meant to look quite uniform and a bit bland looking. Someone actually suggested that I put in houses like this, so I thought that was a nice touch, so definitely jumped on that one. By the way, you're going to see in the live play something that I've started introducing to my patrons. Basically, I've started inviting some patrons onto the save game and to do some builds for me. And this is something that I've been wanting to do for a little while, and now that I have a game that doesn't need quite as many mods and assets to share around, I've started inviting patrons to jump on and build in just little plots that I've left vacant for them. I'm not going to do this all the time, I'm just going to do this from time to time, and I've started doing this with patrons that have been supporting me. I mean, some people have been on my Patreon page for like 6 months, and I just want to say a big thanks to those guys who've been supporting me for so long. And, you know, I think inviting them onto the actual episodes is quite a fun way and a really nice way to collaborate with them. And it's actually been quite a lot of fun to do it and share things around and talk about, you know, where certain areas and how certain places can look. So that's been quite cool. So you'll see a bit of a build from somebody kind of shortly in the live play, which is getting kind of close. I'm trying to keep the time lapse is somewhat short because I am really enjoying doing a live play. I will start doing a bit more building in those live plays too, but you know, quite a lot of the builds work that I do in these episodes are kind of a bit tedious. It's just me plopping down things, so that's why I tend to speed things up. But I think the live plays are great for me just explaining a couple of places, and you know, now that I've got a pretty nice frame rate, I can just float around and check out some places. So now I'm on to my next neighborhood, and this neighborhood is going to reflect a little bit more of a high density downtown area. So I'm trying to choose more townhouses and apartment blocks, but at the same time trying to stay a bit clear of apartments like these taller ones that you see me placing down, because I do want like a really nice prominent skyline, and I don't really want it to sort of be a little bit of a slow creep into a skyline where the skyscraper sits. So I'm going to try and keep it somewhat small until we get to the real heart of the downtown. And, you know, to be honest, this is where it starts getting a bit trickier with assets in terms of the vanilla game, because there's not a huge amount of houses that fits this sort of a theme. But I do think that when we do get into the more heart of the downtown, we can start using some more of those commercial buildings because they work pretty nicely, and we'll start leaving more of the residential areas. So it's really essential that I get a lot of these neighborhoods done kind of soon so that we can focus on the downtown, which is something that I'm kind of itching towards. I do just really want to get the downtown set up so we can, you know, have a bit of a prominent feature of the city, and then we can start moving on to smaller towns and, you know, some industries and stuff, which is kind of what I'm itching to do at the moment. And before I finish up the time lapse, I just got to quickly say that we are running a Q&A on Discord at the moment. That's running for a couple of weeks until an episode where I'll be answering all those questions. So if you have any questions regarding any of my series or my build style, or some hints, or you know, just something that you've always wanted to ask, that'll be the best time and place to do it. I've left a link in the description for that. And that's pretty much it for the time lapse. I'm going to jump into a live play and I'll show you around what I've been building and the plans for the future episodes. So unfortunately, my efforts to increase the population has, well, I feel like it's barely done anything. We still have a massive demand for residential and even a massive demand for commercial. So I dare say I'm going to be back plopping down houses in the next episode, or even the episode after that, because I do really want to start getting a much larger population so that we can focus on industries and offices and start making a bit of a profit, which we're probably not going to do for a little while. But in terms of what I've been up to, I'm sure I talk about most of this in the time lapse, but this is Chester Hill, and I think it turned out pretty, I think it's great. I think it's a great looking area and quite atmospheric. I'm going to just put it on pause because I'm pretty conscious that the more I have the gameplay running, the more I will lose buildings to abandonment. But I mean, it's great. I really love this area. I think it turned out quite interesting, and the use of these fences, although they're not perfect in every location, I think just as a whole, I think it adds a lot of detail. So that's something I'm going to be using quite a lot of in other areas too. I did a bit of a mix of these little shotgun houses and some of the vanilla houses too, because I didn't want it just to look, you know, like one particular house occupied this one area. Did want a couple of other places too. Got a couple of little shop areas, very under detailed, which is what I wanted to do. By the way, I've changed my graphics settings and I'm really happy with how the whole game's looking now. I ended up changing the LUT to the neutral relight setting, and I think it makes it look a lot more realistic. Let me know if you've noticed the change. But pretty much this whole area, there's quite a lot of residents living in this place. Actually, we can probably look if we check out. Yeah, so we did add quite a lot to the population, in particular these houses here, because they hold more than one household. We actually see quite a lot of people living in these places, which is pretty cool. I'm going to continue this whole area around here. I think this will probably be Chester Hill. I don't know. I might add something completely different. I haven't really figured that out just yet. So yeah, Chester Hill, one looking one neighborhood looking in one particular style, and just want to show you Leo's high school that he plopped down. I think it's a great looking high school, great addition. I'm glad I didn't make it because as you probably have seen from Border Town episode, I do a pretty bad job at making high schools, but we definitely needed one of those. We got quite a bit of a traffic jam around here, so I might have to do something with traffic later on down the track. And then going into the downtown region, so obviously this isn't downtown, but it's definitely getting close to it. It's great to actually see a bit of a skyline now starting to form in Montana, so that's great. And you know, something that I'm probably going to talk about in the time lapse, so try not to repeat myself too much, but I did really want a different style of houses in this area, so we are going for the more high rises, and these style of houses I think are perfect because they're more of the townhouse. A lot more residents live in this area, even though the game doesn't exactly recognize two people living in a place like this is pretty extreme. But I think the thing that makes the biggest difference, just like in Chester Hill, is having these backyards. Really low detail. I mean, it doesn't add, I haven't really added anything behind here except for trees, but it just adds so much more. You know, if it didn't have these backyards, it just have this really weird looking space, and I think it adds a lot to this whole area. So I did have quite a few different townhouse style buildings to choose from in terms of vanilla. These ones I love, but they're just, I don't know what happened with the lighting on these things, but they just look awful, even though the model looks beautiful. You can look at the difference. It's really awful. So I don't know if I'm going to continue using these ones. I might replace them, but for the time being, I might keep them here because they are a nice looking model, but they are just, the color on there is just awful. So that's a real shame. And these ones, again, I mean, the color's not fantastic, but you know, they do the job. And generally, we're going to be looking at the city from an angle like this. You know, we're not going to be right down in the midst of the city too often. And in terms of what I'm going to do next episode, I'm going to continue this style of residential neighborhoods along this area, because this is where the downtown's going to sit. And I think I'll probably getting into the downtown in future episodes as we start building up a bit of the commercial and residential areas. You know, seeing as that's what the city needs at the moment, I think that's what we should probably focus on. But do let me know in the comments below what you think I should be focusing on in the next couple of episodes. I do think residential and commercial, just because that's what the city needs. And then we'll get back into the industry a little bit further on down the track. But I think that style of neighborhood around here, creeping into the downtown larger buildings, I think that makes a lot more sense. And hopefully we might start seeing a bit of money, because we are getting a bit more of a population, which is really, really cool. That's something that I want to start seeing as a bit of a profit. But I guess that's it for this episode, guys. Thanks so much for watching the whole thing. If you're listening to this bit right now, I guess you're here for the long run. If you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave some nice feedback, because that's always very much appreciated. And until next time, have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next episode. See you later.